Welcome back to class, everyone. Okay, let's settle in. Today is Tuesday, February 10th, 2026. If you've been scanning the headlines, you're probably seeing just a really chaotic mix of reports. Protests here, diplomatic flights there, naval movements. It's a lot. But our job today is to cut through that noise and really pull it all together into one cohesive analysis. We're looking at a regime that is caught in a dual crisis of vice grip, really, squeezing from the inside and the out.
Exactly. And to understand what's happening geopolitically, you have to see this as a collision. It's a situation where the domestic reality on the ground in Iran and the foreign policy reality in the Middle East are just crashing into each other. You really can't understand one without the other. This isn't just about isolated news clips. We're analyzing a systemic breakdown.
Right, a systemic breakdown. It helps to think of it as a split screen. On one side, you have this internal war against the population,
Right.
the aftermath of that brutal crackdown in January. And on the other side, at the exact same time, there's this high-stakes poker game happening right now today in Oman. And it's all designed to stop a wider war.
And the clock is ticking loudly on both of those fronts. The whole point of our session today is to trace that causal link. We need to understand how a domestic massacre of, tens of thousands of people is actually driving the regime's desperation abroad. So the question is, are we heading for a breakthrough or a forceful military explosion?
Okay, so let's just establish that immediate context. Two parallel timelines.
Sure.
First, the fallout from January 8th and 9th. We're talking about a death toll that is, well, it's staggering. We'll get into the data. And second, while bodies are still being identified in Tehran, top Iranian officials are sitting down with U.S. reps in Muscat.
It's a very jarring image, isn't it? You have blood on the streets of the capital and then polite diplomatic handshakes happening in Muscat. But the connecting tissue here is regime survival. The thesis we're exploring is that the regime is trying to buy its way out of a foreign war because it simply cannot afford to fight one while its own house is on fire.
Before we dig into the forensics of that crackdown and the data we've gathered, I just want to take a quick moment to say this. If you are enjoying this video, please watch it until the end. This greatly helps the channel and encourages us to continue our work.
Okay, so the domestic crisis first. We're calling this the January massacres. As students of this region, you have to pay really close attention to the numbers because there's a massive discrepancy here. And that gap tells a story all by itself.
Right. If you look at the official government releases, they're admitting to, what, about 3,100 deaths?
Roughly, yeah.
And let's be honest, in any other context, 3,000 deaths in 48 hours would be a catastrophe. But independent investigations, leaked hospital data, it's a completely different picture. We're seeing credible estimates from 30,000 to upwards of 36,500 people killed.
Let's just pause on that number for a second. 30,000 people, that is not a riot control operation. That is a military engagement. It's the population of a small town just wiped out in 2 days. And the reason for the discrepancy is the blackout. The internet was shut down, information was strangled, and the government has been aggressively trying to control the narrative by burying the evidence, literally and metaphorically.
And when you look at how this was done, the tactics were military grade. We are not talking about tear gas and rubber bullets here. We have confirmed reports of DSHK machine guns mounted on pickup trucks being used in residential areas.
I want to make sure everyone understands what that means. A DSHK, it's often called a dushka, is a Soviet-era heavy machine gun. It fires a 12.7 millimeter round. This is a weapon designed to shoot down aircraft or shred through armor.
Yeah, against people.
When you fire a round that size into a crowd of unarmed civilians, it doesn't just kill, it liquidates, it dismembers. Using that kind of hardware against protesters isn't policing, it's an act of war against your own citizens.
It's terrifying to even think about. And the reports we have say the violence didn't just stop in the streets. Security forces were pursuing the wounded into hospitals.
This is one of the most disturbing parts of this, and it violates every international norm. A hospital is supposed to be a sanctuary, even in a war, but we have evidence of finish-off orders.
Right.
Security forces literally dragging wounded protesters out of their beds or, executing them right there in the wards. Doctors were threatened. Some were even arrested just for trying to treat the injured.
And then there's the chemical element. What do we know about these reports of detainees being injected with things in custody?
Yes. We have documented cases, people who were released dying days later or getting sick with symptoms that look a lot like nerve agent exposure. It suggests a systematic attempt not just to disperse crowds, but to terrorize the entire population into submission. The goal was to inflict maximum trauma so people would be too afraid to even step outside their homes again.
But, in a class like this, Statistics can be numbing. When you hear 30,000 dead,
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to process the human side of that. We need to look at the stories that managed to get out.
Absolutely. To understand the social impact, you have to look at what resonated with people. And the story that seems to have really gripped the public is that of Ali Karami.
The mechanic.
Right.
He wasn't a political figure. He wasn't an activist, just a 26-year-old guy who fixed cars and, loved his dog.
And that's exactly why his story hit so hard. He died saving an elderly woman from the gunfire. But what made it go viral was a video he'd posted earlier. He was playing with his dog, Ariel, and he said, quote, "If I die before my dog, let her see my lifeless body so she doesn't think I abandoned her."
It hits you right in the gut.
It does. And after he was killed, his family actually honored that wish. They brought the dog to his grave. The image of that dog lying on the dirt, it became a national symbol of grief. It just stripped away all the political rhetoric and showed the pure tragedy of it.
And that's what these regimes fear the most, isn't it? Relatable martyrs. It's hard to paint a guy who loves his dog and saves old ladies as some kind of foreign agent.
Exactly. It breaks their propaganda. Then you have the man at the door, Mohammed Jabari. There's verified video of him holding a door open, trying to save fleeing protesters. He's trying to force the door shut against security agents, and they shoot him at close range. He died protecting strangers.
And Hamid Madavi, the firefighter from Mashhad,
Yeah, well.
killed trying to help the wounded. These aren't rioters, they're just regular people.
And the state knows it. That's why the cover-up has been so aggressive. We're even seeing the bullet fee being reinstated.
Can you just explain what that is? Because it sounds almost too evil to be real.
It's a form of psychological warfare and economic punishment. Families are forced to pay the government for the cost of the ammunition that was used to kill their own children before they're allowed to have the body back for burial.
That is, it's purely designed to humiliate.
It is. And they're also forcing families to sign false statements, claiming their loved ones were Basij members, the pro-government militia who were killed by rioters, all just to get a burial permit. It's rewriting history in real time by forcing the victims to validate the state's lies.
Which brings us to right now, February 10th. The shooting is mostly stopped, but the state's machinery is just shifting gears. Now we're seeing a massive political purge.
Yes. The violence has moved from the streets into the courts and political halls. In early February, we saw the arrests of prominent reformist politicians, people like Azar Mansouri and Hossein Karoubi.
And to be clear, these are not radicals. These are people who operate inside the system. They are the loyal opposition.
Exactly. They aren't calling to overthrow the Islamic Republic. They just wanted some accountability for the killings. And for that, they were arrested. It's a signal that the hardliners are closing ranks completely. There is no room for any dissent, even from inside the tent.
So where does that leave President Masoud Pezeshkian? He was elected with reformist support. He was supposed to be a bridge.
He's a lame duck, totally sidelined. His calls for an inquiry were ignored. He's the face of the government to the world, but he has zero control over the security apparatus at home. The real power, the Revolutionary Guard, the judiciary, the supreme leader, they've cut him out.
And tomorrow is February 11th, the anniversary of the 1979 revolution. This is usually a massive day for the regime to show off its public support, right?
It's the biggest day on their calendar. And this year, it's critical for them. They're desperate. They need a show of legitimacy to tell the world, look, everything is fine. The people are with us.
Clearly, everything isn't fine.
No. So we have reports that intelligence agencies are now threatening the families of the victims. They're being told, you have to attend the pro-regime rallies. Take photos of yourself there to prove it. If you don't, your relative in prison will be executed.
It is forced loyalty at gunpoint. It's Orwellian.
It is. The supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, has issued a message calling for disappointing the enemy, demanding unity. But when you have to threaten grieving mothers to get them to wave a flag for you, that's not unity. That's a hostage situation.
So while this nightmare is playing out at home, we have to pivot to the international scene, because this internal weakness is driving their external behavior. Right now, a delegation is in Oman.
That's the other timeline we mentioned. While this is all happening, top officials led by Ali Larijani are in Muscat.
And who is Larijani? Why him?
He's the secretary of the Supreme National Security Council, but more importantly, he's a direct representative of the supreme leader. He's a regime survivor. The fact that he is there means this is serious. They aren't sending junior diplomats, they're sending the decision makers.
And on the other side?
The U.S. delegation, Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, with the Omani foreign minister mediating. It's indirect, but it's high level.
So what's on the table? What's the offer?
The big signal is that Iran's atomic chief, Mohammad Islami, is open to diluting their stockpile of 60% enriched uranium.
Let's pause on that. 60% enriched. Why is that number so important here?
Good question. It's all about physics. 5% enrichment is for power plants. 20% is for medical reactors. Once you get to 60%, there's no civilian use for it. None. And the technical jump from 60% to 90%, which is weapons grade, is very, very short. So 60% is basically a bomb in waiting.
The stockpile that keeps the U.S. and Israel up at night?
Correct. So Iran is offering to water it down, blend it back to lower levels so it's not an immediate threat. In exchange, they want all sanctions lifted.
That's a huge ask. All sanctions just for diluting a stockpile they can rebuild later?
It is, but look at the motivation. Why now? Why, after all this tough talk, are they suddenly willing to deal?
Because of the massacre.
Exactly. It's the survival tactic theory. The regime is under crushing pressure at home. The economy is in ruins. If the U.S. or Israel were to launch a military strike right now, they fear it could be the final blow that topples them. They need cash to quell the unrest, or at least to pay the security forces who are doing the quelling. They need to buy time.
But there's a spoiler in this mix. Benjamin Netanyahu is heading to Washington at the same time.
Right. Netanyahu is meeting with President Trump, and his goal is pretty clear. He wants to kill this narrow deal.
He doesn't think pausing the nuclear program is enough.
He's afraid that if the U.S. lifts sanctions just for a pause, Iran gets billions of dollars, stabilizes itself, and then just restarts the program later. He wants the talks to include ballistic missiles and support for proxies like Hamas and Hezbollah.
Which Iran has always said are non-negotiable.
Precisely. That's the poison the well strategy. If Israel can convince the U.S. to add conditions that Iran will absolutely reject, the talks collapse. And if the talks collapse, the military option is back on the table.
And that option isn't abstract. The military hardware is physically there.
It is very real. The USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Group is in the region. You have F-35s, A-10 Warthogs, Patriot missile systems. It's a massive buildup.
And there was that maritime advisory yesterday.
Yes. The U.S. Maritime Administration told commercial ships to stay away from Iranian waters in the Strait of Hormuz. They're worried about Iranian boarding operations. It's incredibly tense.
Speaking of maritime risks, I want to touch on something that often gets overlooked in all this. The shadow fleet.
This is a ticking time bomb. It really is. We're talking about hundreds of old, decrepit oil tankers that Iran uses to smuggle oil to get around sanctions. They're often uninsured, poorly maintained, and they turn off their tracking transponders.
So they're just ghost ships full of oil.
Exactly. And the experts are warning that we are one accident away from an environmental catastrophe that makes the Exxon Valdez look like a small spill.
That is a terrifying thought.
It's not an exaggeration. If one of those breaks up in the Strait of Hormuz, you could destroy the entire Gulf ecosystem. You shut down the desalination plants that provide drinking water for millions of people in the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Qatar. It's a whole other layer to this crisis that is genuinely horrifying.
So let's try to synthesize this. We have a regime that has just killed tens of thousands of its own citizens. It's purging its own political class. And at the same time, it's desperately trying to cut a deal with the U.S., while Israel is trying to push for a harder line.
It's a moment of extreme fragility. They're trying to crush a revolution at home while buying their way out of a war abroad. And these two things are linked. If they get sanctions relief, they use that money to secure their internal control. If they don't, the pressure cooker at home might just explode.
You know, there's a sentiment coming from the families of the victims. It's not just mourning. They're documenting.
They're calling it their Nuremberg moment. Lawyers, activists, regular families, they're gathering evidence, names, photos, chain of command details. They see this as a crime against humanity to be prosecuted later. They're playing the long game. They're betting that one day this regime will fall and they will have the receipts.
It raises a really provocative final question for us. Let's say the regime pulls this off. They get a deal, sanctions are lifted, money flows in. Does that actually stabilize the Middle East? Or does it just fund the next crackdown?
And on the other side, how does the Iranian population react if a deal happens? Do they see it as a betrayal by the West, a betrayal of all the blood that was spilled in January?
It's the stability paradox. A deal might stop a regional war, but it could end up fueling the internal fire.
The next 48 hours, the rally tomorrow, the outcome of the Oman meetings, they are going to define the next chapter. We are watching history pivot in real time.
We certainly are. It's a heavy topic, but an absolutely essential one to understand the world right now.
A textbook case of domestic crisis driving foreign policy.
That brings us to the end of this analysis. If viewers enjoyed the video, they can subscribe to the channel, activate the notification bell to be notified about new videos, click the like button, and share the video with their colleagues, as this helps us maintain the channel. Thank you.